Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar from ERA, the European Union Agency for Railways. I'm Cyril Martin, Communication Officer, and I will be your moderator today. As you know, the long-awaited European Railway Traffic Management System Conference is returning to Valenciennes next month from the 26th to the 28th of April. Similarly to previous editions, this year, the agency is opening its doors to receive participants from Europe and all over the world who are keen to share their experiences, discuss their views, and establish contacts on the harmonized signaling system in Europe. In anticipation to the Ertms 2022 conference, we have prepared for you a teaser webinar in order to give you a taste of the much-awaited topics for this year's edition. Without further ado, I will now introduce our speakers. Josef Doppelbauer, the Executive Director of the agency, Pio Guido, the Head of the Railway Systems Department at ERA, Monica Aiming, the Executive Director of EIM, the European Rail Infrastructure Managers Association, Mr. Mark Topal, CTO of OBB, the Austrian Railways, and representing the CER, the Community of European Railways and Infrastructure Companies. And last but not least, Matthias Ruete, the European Coordinator for Ertms. Thank you all for being here today. Before I give the floor to Mr. Josef Doppelbauer, I'd like to remind you that, as usual, you are most welcome to ask questions to our speakers using the chat function, which you will find at the top right-hand corner of your screen. You can also tag questions from other attendees, which you'll find valuable by clicking the sub icon. We will do our best to reply to the greatest number of questions at the end of this webinar. In any case, we commit to reply to all your questions on the ERA website in the coming days. Please be informed that this event is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel and our website in the coming days. Without further ado, I will now give the floor to Mr. Josef Doppelbauer, the Executive Director of the agency. Please, Josef.
Many thanks, Cyril, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The large-scale deployment of the European Rail Traffic Management System, Ertms, is a major industrial policy initiative, an initiative that will help to break down the barriers in international train traffic. The European Union Agency for Railways, ERA, is the system authority for Ertms. The Ertms 2022 conference this April in Valenciennes will be a key moment to assess the progress made with Ertms, the challenges and opportunities, and to engage with direct contacts and exchanges with all relevant stakeholders. It is also the first Ertms conference of the European Union Agency for Railways in which we will be able to take stock of the return of experience of now nearly 3 years of EU-wide responsibility of ERA for vehicle authorization and Ertms trackside approval. One of the key drivers behind Ertms is safety. The higher the train speed, the higher the line capacity, the more important automatic train protection, and this is provided by Ertms, the more important this will become. Rail connects people, and Ertms makes sure that this connection can happen in a safe manner, seamlessly and without frontiers. Therefore, the motto of the Ertms 2022 conference is safe, connected, without frontiers. This motto is, of course, very closely related to the vision of the agencies to have a sustainable, safe European transport system without frontiers. In this webinar today, we would like to give you an overview of what you can expect at that Ertms conference. Together with our guest speakers, we will share some insights on the main topics that this conference will cover. But first and foremost, Ertms 2022 will be an opportunity to meet. We expect to welcome 500 participants from all over the world, industry experts, representatives of railway undertakings and infrastructure managers, as well as from authorities. More than ever, the full deployment of Ertms is essential for enabling the rail sector to meet the ambitious targets of the European Green Deal and to meet the milestones of the strategy for sustainable and smart mobility. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you at our conference in Valenciennes. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Joseph. Let me now give the floor to Pio Guido, the Head of Railway Systems Department at ERA. Please, Pio.
Thank you and good afternoon. 2 months ago, when we decided to go ahead with the physical conference in April, this was still seen as a gamble or an optimistic expectation. One of the reasons that motivated that decision is that we will be in the final step of the revision of the Ertms specifications and of the TSI CCS. And we count on this unique opportunity to meet face-to-face, as Josef mentioned, and to have open discussions with all the stakeholders to facilitate the shared understanding of the ambitions that we have for this revision. So before showing the conference program, I will take a few minutes just to give a very brief key highlights of this revision. In fact, tomorrow we will publish on our website the revised text of the TSI, actually of all the TSI in the package, and we launched a consultation that will last for 3 months. So that after receiving and processing all the comments from the consultation, we will issue the final recommendation to the Commission by the end of June. And in turn, the Commission will then organize the process and lead the discussion with the Member State representative with a view to have a final positive vote in risk in November. The revision of the TSI and of the specification for ERTMS will introduce game changes, those resulting from the important work of the Shift to Rail joint undertaking, but also legal provisions to strengthen the ETCS deployment requirement. In particular, for Member States, there will be obligations to have more detailed, precise implementation plans. There will be requirements to make available at fair conditions Class B systems or STMs, avoiding to provide only integrated solutions that can create a barrier for the market. There will be obligations also for the vehicles to install ETCS, respecting transition as specifically detailed in an annex of the TSI, and the obligation to use at least baseline 3 or higher for vehicles that will be upgraded. The TSI will also introduce more balance between the interest of the infrastructure managers and of the railway undertaking for implementing new functions. For example, ITO, there will be the need to ensure a compatibility window of 7 years before those new functions can be required for the onboard that has to travel on specific lines. And new functions must be announced by the infrastructure managers at least 5 years before with RINF, with the Register of Infrastructure. There will be also provision to facilitate the maintenance of the specifications and their use by the suppliers, by the clients. So we will introduce one single set of specification, and they will cover all the baselines from baseline 2 to baseline 3 that we will have in the TSI. But this will simplify the maintenance of the specs, ensure that the error correction will be corrected for all the baseline where a problem can be found. And for error corrections, we will have a specific regime, a transition period until 2025, where if an error is detected in the implementation, only when this will impact the safe operation with acceptable level of performance, will be necessary to correct it in a mandatory manner. And then after 2025, we will have full implementation of error correction based on the specific mechanism that we will specify in the TSI. And this is also, as also Josef mentioned, the first opportunity that we have to include the return of experience that we had directly in the vehicle authorization and its trackside approval role as an authority. So we will have, for example, the elimination of this clause that we have today in the TSI CCS that allows partial fulfillment, so that you can have an onboard that only partially fulfills the specifications. We want to push for fully compliant products in conformity with the applicable system version. But again, the program of the conference is not only the CCS regulation and the ERTMS specifications. We will have ample coverage of the financial, of the economic aspect of installing ERTMS, of the industrial challenges, of the migration, engineering, the operational aspect. We will have first-hand experiences and feedback from the stakeholders, from the authorities. The structure of the conference. We have taken into account the feedback that we have received in the last edition in 2019. The workshops were highly appreciated, and this is why the first day we opened the conference with 10 workshops to give the opportunity to the participants to exchange views with the experts and with their peers. The first day is a a half day of workshop. We start after lunch. We start with coffee, but no lunch. We intend to limit the size of the groups participating to the workshop on a first come, first served basis. We want to ensure that the groups are small to facilitate direct interaction, but each workshop will be run 3 times by the same moderator. So there is an opportunity for everybody to find a place. It's important that when you register at the conference, you choose the workshop or the workshops that you want to attend. You will not be able to change it afterward. The main purpose, in fact, is, as we said, learning and exchanging. The workshop will be a balance between looking at the present, what goes well, what are the opportunities, the challenges for the deployment for retrofitting vehicles. The workshop number 1, moderated by the Commission, will look at the experiences and the benefit of synchronizing the development on board and trackside of the commissioning Class B. The workshop number 2, moderated by colleagues in the agency, will look at how best retrofit vehicle and apply correctly the rules for a successful vehicle authorization. The workshop 5 will look at capacity, and the workshop 9, importantly, will be a discussion and return of experience on the trackside approval, the new mechanism that the photo package has installed and for which we have started to gain experience. Workshop will also look at the TSI CCS. As I mentioned, we look at the architecture of the onboard, at the TSI text, at the introduction of FRMCS, the Future Communication System. A workshop, an important one, workshop 8, will explain the role of the system pillar and the innovation pillar in the new joint undertaking and the synergies between innovation and regulation. And we will have the workshop number 10, which will make the link between technology and operation and the impact of the trackside engineering rules. So the first half day will really be a hands-on session, and we expect significant result and feedback from the workshop that will be reported in plenary sessions in day 2 and day 3. Day 2 will be the start of the plenary sessions of the conference, with the opening at the top level of the Commission. The first 3 sessions will have high-level moderators, the Director of Land Transport from the European Commission, the Director of Europe's Rail Joint Undertaking, and the Executive Director of the agency. The title of Day 2 is Past, Present, Future. The first session will take stock of the deployment of Ertms, and the Ertms coordinator, Matthias Ruete, and the Commission will assess the situation compared to the ambitious target and explain the policy priorities and initiatives. We will have also a report from the workshop number 1 on the previous day. The second session will cover the key elements and the rationale for the TSI CCS revision, and we'll also have a report from the vehicle authorization workshop. The third session will look at the evolution, digitalization of the rail system, at the role of the system pillar and innovation pillar. And day 2 will end up with a networking cocktail so that we will give everyone the possibility to meet face-to-face, enjoy informal discussions with all the other participants. The COVID rules as they are today in France and applicable for Cité des Congrès, which is the venue, is that you don't have to show the vaccination pass, you don't have the obligation to wear face masks. Of course, those are the rules today. We will follow with attention any evolution, and all the information is available on our website. Day 3, we'll see the opening with the keynote messages from CEOs, different companies, and then we will have 2 sessions dedicated to return of experience from project, where the first session moderated by the managing director of the Ertms users group, and the second by the general manager of UNISIG. We will see success stories and challenges. We will see project completed, ongoing project, and initial plans to introduce innovation like ATO or ETCS level 3. And most importantly, we will have the report from the workshop 9 on trackside approval. The closing session of day 3, we will have a roundtable with CEOs and top-level panelists, taking stock of the important result of all the 3 days and discussing how to take the challenges ahead to implement our ambition for this harmonized system. So throughout the conference, we will have speakers and moderators, as Josef has said, from the Commission, from the Ertms coordinator, the Europe's Rail Joint Undertaking, representative organization, railway operators, infrastructure managers, industrial suppliers, and of course, the colleagues from the agency. We are extremely grateful to the representative from the sector and from the NSA that have contributed in the steering committee for this conference. And we are very grateful to the speakers and to the panelists who have already committed to bring their voice and experience to this conference. We look forward to welcome, to meet, and to learn from all the participants in this event. Thank you.
Many thanks, Pio. Let me now give the floor to Monica Heiming, the Executive Director of the EIM, the European Rail Infrastructure Managers Association. Please, Monica, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Cyril, and thank you very much for the invitation of ERA to speak at this conference as its teaser conference. I think it's an excellent initiative. And we are very much looking forward, of course, making our contribution to the main conference in April. After some time of non-meeting, it's great to meet again. So what are the views of EIM on Ertms? Of course, I mean, it's obvious to say for us, it's the butter and bread business, basically. So for us, it's a step to the next generation infrastructure management and step into the universe, virtually speaking. So Ertms and TCS, TSI, CCS revision process we need to have. And of course, we support the very important role of ERA. We would have liked a bit more ambition on FRMCS, but so be it. I mean, there is no point of return compared to Ertms, and we very much appreciate that we have a faster evolution. Sometimes we even like it faster, even more, not faster than before or in the past. Because we have a very rapidly evolving market, and we have also market demand. Now we have several initiatives in the place, like 10T, for example. We have a new approach of ERA. So we know Ertms is a complex system as such to land totally everywhere on the national level, but there is no way back, basically. So, and we very much support the role of the agency in making this happen, although it is sometimes a little bit mission complicated. So the error correction process, so what we are currently working on is now becoming part of the TSI CCS. We, however, still struggle, and that is not only us, everybody, with regular updates and upgrades. So we need to steer this very well. And also the agency is probably having a very complex task in overlooking all this and steering it. But okay, we also appreciate, of course, the trackside approval. We still need to assess the cost-benefit ratio. It's a new process that is landing on us, but we have several pending cases with the agency, with the approvals. So the conference as such is an excellent opportunity for further discussions and also feedback our experience from the revision process and the trackside approvals. The trackside engineering rules is a very important topic for some of our members and our experts. We further support the operational harmonization of the EU rail system. It is actually needed. It's not easy, but it is needed. Again, the conference is a very good starting point and also a good place and a format to discuss this also with other infrastructure managers. Next slide, please. Then we have the system pillar. You briefly raised it also in the very, very large conference program. So the desired outcome is a more harmonized or more harmonized technical solutions for the broader CCS scope, and also solutions for the business problems. And there are plenty. So the system pillar hopefully fixes it all. So for us, it's a very strategic place to be. And also error corrections is important, and also the issues with the vendor lock-in. I know it's a complicated issue. So the ambition with us, as I said it already, so ERA has a very important role in the system pillar as system authority. We support that role. And also as regard the TSI change control management process. So we need a broad sector involvement, otherwise it will not work. We are all in it together as a sector. And of course, engagement in the results of the system pillar. So let us not let it sit on the shelf afterwards. We need to implement it. And of course, the migration evolving to the target situation, same thing here. ERA should steer it in the best possible way and across the entire market. So that was it. It was less than 10 minutes, but then someone else can have my 2 spare minutes left. So thank you very much.
Many thanks, Monica. Many thanks. I will now give the floor to Mark Topol, the CTO of OBB, the Austrian Railways, and representing today the CER, the Community of European Railway and Infrastructure Companies. Please, Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon from my side as well. Well, maybe one first remark. I think it's something like the mid of 80s since we worked together on the ERTMS development and finally deployment. And interestingly, the vision and the idea and the expected benefits are still valid. Creating a single European system, replacing the 20+ different national ones, allowing safe and efficient operations, and in particular enabling cross-border operations in a different manner. So increasing quality and capacity of operations, and finally, last but not least, reducing costs. So CR believes that ERTMS deployment shall be boosted, has to be boosted. Not really a surprising position after almost 40 years of this development. So the only thing is we need to do this right. So we need to learn from the 10 to 15 years of experience we already have in deploying it, or even more. We need to be careful, and we need to take into account 4 major points from our perspective. The first one is, so if you could have the first slide, please, if possible, sound economics and the fair funding. So in particular, when it comes to the business cases, and in particular for the railway undertakings and wagon keepers, the majority of these cases, or in many cases, there is almost zero benefit and a lot of costs, even for upgrades. There are certain examples where we have 1 million euro per loco, and this is not only a software upgrade. So this is then 25% of the full asset costs. CR believes that an improvement of funding instruments is needed. In particular, referring to railway undertakings and wagon keepers, we need to find solutions. And we need a functioning market as well. Especially when it comes to upgrades, we need to come to a situation to have more than 1 or 2 suppliers being capable of doing the specific tasks. The second major point is effective harmonization. So I think ERA is doing a great job in improving this process. At the moment, still, we need to admit that ETCS is not equal to ETCS. We need a full up and downwards compatibility of trackside and onboard systems. This includes somehow freezing of baselines for a significant time period. I know we are working on that, but we need to be clear on this, that we cannot change this system every year. The third major point is synchronization of deployment. Deployment plans need to be better aligned, I know we're working on that. There is a lot of efforts coming from different sides to work on that. We need to allow generating a benefit along corridors and even more in the different areas of our European network. And therefore, we need to agree on certain milestones for the future technology leaps. Step by step, we need to harmonize our steps that finally we will make these steps all together in a synchrony manner. And the fourth point is that we need to focus on the real benefit and impact. We should not forget ERTMS has been developed as something like 3 pillars, ETCS, GSMR, and it was called these days the ETML, the European Traffic Management Layer, if someone remembers. When talking about ERTMS today, it seems that we forgot somehow about this third pillar. Or maybe we didn't, because it is a #1 priority in the Europe's Rail Joint Undertaking Initiative, the flagship area, the flagship project #1, will exactly deal with the European traffic management system. And this is a bringer of benefit. So we CR very much welcomes the work to be carried out in this upcoming flagship project and the system pillar. And we do hope that this will finally be one of the next generations of the ETCS ERTMS system, then including the TMS, ATO, level 3, whatever, bringing us, let's say, significant more benefit, justifying the investment needed. So we need to find a way to jointly approach and find a way to jointly make these steps together. CR will remain a reliable and highly active partner for both, boosting the deployment as well as addressing these urgent needs from the railway operating community to make this happen. And we are very much looking forward to this conference, where we would like to see, and I think it will be the case, that we will be together with the suppliers, the manufacturing industry, the agency for sure, Commission, and for sure the infrastructure managers and the member states, the railway undertakings, and finally the partners from ERJU. So I think it's a perfect match where we could really see some interesting ways forward, how we could proceed, how we could be successful all together as a family. And this is the only chance we have here. So we are very much looking forward to this, and we will be not stopping supporting this initiative. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mark. I'd like now to hear Matthias Ruete, the European coordinator for ERTMS. Please, Matthias, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Cyril, and dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be part of this teaser webinar that we're holding today. My first more political comment is we are actually in a situation worldwide where the world seems to be falling apart at the moment. And at the same time, the European Union seems to be getting much closer together on a lot of issues. And if I look at ERTMS in general terms, we can say that things are coming together for ERTMS. And this is why I so much welcome this conference at this time, where we actually are confronted with a number of very important political decisions which will be taken. First of all, let's have we have a new proposal for the TEN-T regulation, which is on the table, which needs to be negotiated, hopefully in the course of this year, hopefully perhaps already with a political agreement on the level of the French presidency or the Czech presidency in the second half of the year. So we have a different framework which we're looking at, also in as much as ERTMS is concerned, to the end of the year. We have, as Pio was introducing, and under obviously the responsibility also of Josef, the proposal for the TSI CCS, which is an essential proposal which is coming. We have, and Mark was mentioning that we have the new systems pillar in place, which has to become operational. We have as was said, the experience in terms of trackside approval, in terms of vehicle approvals, where we can actually draw first lessons. So a lot of elements are there which need to be discussed, and I will be looking forward especially to the workshops on the first day, I will be trying to participate in as many as possible. I know that I have to indicate where I have to go, but I will be trying to see as much as possible, take as much as possible the experience that the colleagues have. We also will have this year, I say this very modestly, my new work program as ERTMS coordinator, where I will be drawing the lessons, hopefully the lessons, and I will be learning a lot in the conference on that. And at the same time, I will be able to give you some ideas in terms of where we stand in terms of the deployment trackside. I think if we look at it from the EDP, the European Deployment Plan of 2017, we're on track for 2023. We have only some 8% which is missing, so a lot of it is actually in the pipeline. We are also moving forward in as much as the 2030 deadline is concerned. And I'm very confident if I look at all the plans in terms of trackside deployment for 2040, that we will actually in the end up with a situation where we can say that it is realistic to look at 2040 in terms of the overall deployment on the comprehensive TEN-T network in as much as ERTMS is concerned. I'm much more worried about the vehicles, to be very frank with you, and I think we will be discussing this in the conference. We will be looking at this. If I look at the figures at the moment, we only have some 7,000 vehicles equipped. If I look at the contracts that I know about, we will have something like 14,000 by 2030. If we look at the projections in terms of needs and the way that ERTMS is developing in different member states as being a whole network system, in reality, we have something between 14,000 and 20,000 vehicles which would be missing by 2030, and we have to look at that, and we will be discussing also the overall approaches in different member states and whether there's a need for a European deployment plan also on the vehicle side. We need to discuss that during the conference. We will be discussing things such as should we phase out Class B systems? Should we have a definite deadline on that? How do we, as Marco was mentioning, how do we actually manage transition? How do we make sure that in future we talk about ERTMS as the name says, and I was involved in this since the 90s, the mid-90s, it's a rail traffic management system. It's not only trackside, it's not only vehicles, it is actually also the traffic management layer. We'll be talking about that in the conference. And I'll be looking forward to hearing a lot of these, lot of points of views on that, and then playing my role as a coordinator of making sure that stakeholders continue to stay together the way they are at the moment in terms of moving ahead with ERTMS. So those are my few ideas for the conference from my side, and I look very much forward to all the debate that we will be having. Thank you.
Many thanks, Matthias. Now I would like to give the floor back to Josef Doppelbauer, the Executive Director of the agency. Josef, would you like to react to what has been just said?
Well, many thanks, Cyriel, and many thanks to our speakers. And of course, it is very interesting to listen to the positions that are expressed by the representatives of the stakeholders. I believe, and Matthias has highlighted that, we need to now use the momentum that we have on the one hand with the environmental consciousness, the role of rail as being the most environmentally friendly transport mode, with the money that is available from the Recovery and Resilience Fund to really make a push towards creating a single European rail area, and ERTMS clearly is one of the key enablers. So the conference that we will be having in April in Valenciennes should give us the opportunity to really discuss in depth what are the major stumbling blocks, what shall we do in order to accelerate and in order also to meet the targets that have been put forward or will also be put forward in the upcoming revision of the 10T regulation. Again, Ertms 2022, it will be the main technical rail conference of 2022. It will be devoted entirely to Ertms. Its timing is also perfectly aligned with the public consultation on the new TSI and also possibly with discussing some of the aspects of the upcoming 10T revision. You will have interesting workshops, you will have an unparalleled lineup of speakers, and of course, many relevant conversations. So we invite everyone to join the conference, also to register as soon as possible, as the places at our conference are limited. And we are, of course, here now to answer any question you might have on the conference, on the organization, on the venue, but also on the content. So please let us know which questions we should reply to.
Many thanks, Josef. And I can compliment by saying that you are more than welcome to ask your questions even after this webinar. You will find on the webpage of this webinar a form to send all your questions and to send also your feedback on this webinar.
Well, Cyril, there is
please.
already one question. And the question that is in the chat is about the support of Ertms applications outside of Europe, support by ERA and by the European Commission. I believe that it is a known fact that there is a significant deployment of Ertms outside Europe. If I'm not mistaken, in terms of length of lines deployed, it is at least at the same level as in Europe. And of course, it is the strong interest of the European Commission to recognize that the system remains a European system. That also means that we should be also the system authority in charge of the versions that are deployed outside Europe. The advantage should be obvious because standardization creates a common basis, a common technical basis. It should also create the necessary return of experience so that it can all be used to improve one single system, and it should also eliminate the risk of lock-in into one particular supplier. So we are also strongly supporting the global application of Ertms, and of course the Ertms 2022 conference is open to participants from all over the world. And in our last conference in 2019, we indeed did have participants from many countries, from the Far East to South America.
Many thanks, Josef. If there are no further questions, so you also, dear attendees, that we already replied to some very technical questions about the organization directly in the chat. Again, you are more than welcome to ask other questions later on. We invite you to join the ERA website. You cannot miss it now. It's on the front page of the website to retrieve all the information about the conference. This is also the place where you can register for this conference. We really invite you to do it as soon as you can because the places are limited. So please join the ERA website for every information you might need about the conference. And I see that another question has just been asked in the chat. Maybe to Pio. How will the agency facilitate lively exchanges at the conferences and exchanges of views? Will there be opportunities to exchange their diverging views and have real discussions? How and where? Pio, maybe you want to take that question.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions, Enno. Indeed, this is one of the elements that motivated us to take this decision to have the conference. We have, of course, very open discussions in the working parties. We also sometimes exchange emails and letters, but nothing can really take the place of a real face-to-face discussion, not only between the agency and the sector, but sometimes also among different representatives in the sector itself. So first of all, I would like to thank again, as I said, the members from CER and from EIM and the other organizations that helped us in the steering committee for this conference, because this is the way we try to capture also the needs expressed by the sector to facilitate this type of discussion, not only in terms of the content of the different sessions, but also to organize properly the coffee breaks, to organize the lunch breaks that will be long enough to ensure that there is also discussion, to organize the events, for example, at the second day with the extended networking cocktail. And of course, first and foremost, I think, is the organization of the workshop. I think in the workshop, we have tried to put the most, I would say, controversial or difficult or subscribe to topics from trackside approval to the content of the TSI, error correction. Some of them have been highlighted by the speakers today. And the workshops will be in small groups. So the discussion is really not a PowerPoint presentation. It's really a discussion among all the participants to the workshop. And what we have done is we integrate in the plenary sessions the feedback, the conclusions of the different workshops that will be reported back by the moderators. And the moderators of the workshops also are not only colleagues from the agency. We have moderators that are from individual railways, suppliers. The same is for the speakers and also the moderation you have seen of the, for example, of day 2. I mean, all the moderations are done by a representative of the sector. So this is the way we are trying to make sure, as Enno says, that really we will have lively exchanges and opportunities to exchange divergent views. Thank you.
Many thanks, Pio. In the meantime, we received a comment on the chat. Don't forget that ERTMS cross-country will work if the public infrastructure for certificate exchange is established between vendor, infrastructure railway, and railway and RU. Maybe we could hear Mark from the CER about that. Mark, would you have something to reply to this comment?
Well, I mean, that's no secret that we have a compatibility, that we need a compatibility, and this needs to be functioning. So maybe a general remark and supporting this comment. If we fail to see this as a system, there will be no success. So it is, and I think it has been mentioned by a couple of speakers, and Matthias, I think, was underlining this as well. It's not enough to see it from the perspective of either the supplying industry, railway undertakings, or infrastructure managers. It is a system, and this system will generate benefit. It will cost money, so we need to invest in it, but we need to do this right as a family. So yes, compatibility is crucial. It's of vital importance. Being smart regarding the migration plan, the deployment plan, is as well as much as important as having a system being compatible and functioning. So yes, I could really support this comment, and I think it's no secret that everyone is aware of this fact.
Many thanks, Mark. Does anyone want to add something, to comment something on what has been said before we close this webinar?
If I may,
Yeah, please, Matthias.
Just since I think Mark was alluding to it, but without actually going into the detail, we will, in this conference, and we have to be prepared to that. We probably confronted with an ongoing war in the Ukraine and questions such as cybersecurity. In terms of, interoperability is very important also for military mobility, but we need to make sure also that cybersecurity is well reflected. I know that Josef and Pio, you're working on that, but I think we perhaps have to think about how this is actually also more highlighted in the conference. Just a little reflection on the basis of our discussion today.
Indeed, Matthias. Many thanks for this comment. Well, if there are no further questions or wishes to... Oh, and we've just received another question in the chat. Thanks a lot, dear attendees. Is it possible to get an updated situation of the deployment of the ERTMS? That's a very broad question. We might not be able to reply in depth, but maybe Pio, would you have some thoughts and some ideas to reply to this question now?
Yes, sorry. An updated situation of the deployment of ERTMS. This is the question you are referring to. I think that this will be one of the key elements we will have in the conference. Of course, I know that Josef promised that we will ask content. On the other end, this is a teaser, so we cannot give all the answers now, otherwise you don't come to the conference. But clearly for session 2, when we will have, by the way, also the presence of Matthias to speak in the first session, we will have definitely a hard look at what is the situation in terms of the deployment, also with respect to the ambitious target that we have. So clearly it is part of the program of the conference. I don't know if Matthias, I think, can say more about that.
I was already in this webinar trying to give you as a teaser some of the things that I'm going to say in the conference, but I am in the process of finalizing, consulting with all of you, my next work program, which actually also looks at where we stand with facts and figures, and you will get all that if you come to the conference. Thanks.
Many thanks to all of you. I think we are now reaching the end of this webinar. First, let me give a warm thank you to all our speakers and all the colleagues involved in the preparation of this event. Thank you for your attendance and participation, dear attendees. Of course, we are waiting for you now at the conference, the real one, the physical conference in Valenciennes from the 26th to the 28th of April. Before you go, we would be very happy to receive your feedback on this webinar via the link provided on the webinar webpage on the ERA website, or via the QR code you're seeing right now on the screen and that you can flash with your smartphone. We look forward to meeting you again at our upcoming webinar, which is coming very shortly next week, next Wednesday on the 23rd of March, about how to attract young people to the railway sector, young talent. In the meantime, if you would like to stay updated on our activities, you can sign in our database by selecting the button Login on our website page. Thank you very much for participating. We wish you a very pleasant afternoon and take care. Bye.